Hello and welcome to the Editing Podcast. We've put together a series of bonus episodes called Point of View, in which we talk directly to authors about their editing and indie publishing experiences.
This interview is with Simon Raybould, a presentations trainer and the author of Presentation Genius. We caught up with him at the Atomicon Digital Marketing Conference in March 2019, and amongst other things, we chatted about the differences between publishing with a mainstream press and doing it yourself. Here's Simon. So our next guest is Simon Raybould, who's a presentations expert, and Simon's done publishing in all sorts of different ways, and he's going to come and tell us about his editing process, his writing process. So Simon, first of all, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll take it from there.
I'm a presentations trainer. I help people make better presentations. It's as simple as that. The books tend to come out of my knowledge about that.
And Denise and I actually met you last year because you came along to the Society of Editors and Proofreaders conference, and unfortunately I didn't manage to get to your session, but it got outstanding feedback. So if you do, as an author, want to learn how to stand up in front of people and talk about your books better, this guy might be worth talking to.
Yeah, somebody gave the feedback of 6 out of 5.
Yeah,
which was
that's
lovely.
That's good.
It was very flattering, yes.
So Simon, did you work with an editor when you published? I know you've published through the mainstream as well, so that was probably handled for you. But
So I've published with a really big name mainstream publisher. I have self-published into PDF and I've self-published into print on demand. By far and away the easiest is with the mainstream, obviously, because they do everything.
So it all for you. Was that Code and Page?
It was Hod and Stone.
All right. Yeah.
The downside of that, of course, is that you see none of the money. The upside of that is that when somebody slaps a cease and desist on you from Toronto, you just hand the problem over to the
legal team,
who write a legal version of "Come and have a go if you think you're hard enough." But when I was writing for myself, for self-publishing and stuff like that, no, I just wrote. I wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote and wrote. Then I put it away for about 18 months so that I had time to forget it. I'd like to pretend that was a plan. It was more a question of things happened and I never got round to finishing the books. So then I came back, and looking at them fresh after 18 months makes it much easier to edit them. And then they go through, well, you've seen my raw writing. They go through 2 proofreaders before they go anywhere even remotely public. So my wife is a good reader, and she looks at the stuff before I even think about giving it to my paid proofreader.
Yeah.
because she sends me really rude messages about being an idiot and things like that.
And
now
you can take that from her.
There's a lesson about why some of you might choose not to give it to your spouse to look at. Yep. Simon's obviously much more thick-skinned.
Well, all my spouse does, my wife does. Corinne, she's a saint. What she basically does is just get it to the point where some of the embarrassing stuff has been taken out.
Yeah.
And what Claire does is get it right.
Yeah.
So what I mean.
Ready for publication.
Ready for publication.
Yeah.
And the beauty of working with Claire is that she's been with me for 15 years.
So she knows your voice.
She knows my voice.
Is this your is Claire your paid proofreader?
Claire's my paid, yeah.
Right, yeah.
But not only therefore, she stopped being just a proofreader because she's been with me for 15 years.
Yeah.
As you say, she understands my voice. So it's entirely possible she'll rewrite a paragraph.
Yeah.
If she looks at it and there's more red line than not, she'll just send me an email going, this paragraph is beyond redemption, is it okay if I rewrite it?
So she'll actually, so rewriting and much deeper editing than just really proofreading.
She will call it proofreading, but it starts to be it blurs heavily into editing at that point. And I've been with her for so long that when she sends me it back with changes on in Word, I just tend to go Control-A, accept all.
Yeah.
I don't even bother checking what she's...
She also understands your business. This is quite interesting because I think a lot of indie authors don't work directly, don't necessarily have a relationship with an editor over that extensive a period. So it's not just that she knows you and how you communicate, but also She knows exactly what you do.
Yep. She's seen me do it. She's been on my training courses. She's helped me design those training courses. She's been with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a very, I'm going to use the word intimate relationship, which sounds really wrong, but
No, I know exactly
you know what I mean.
It sounds very collaborative.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yes. Yeah. Well, there's a joke we share sometimes, which is that I once did a radio interview and they asked me what I brought to the team. And I said, I'm really good at coming up with lots and lots of really good ideas. I'm rubbish at detail, but I'm really good at coming up with lots and lots of good ideas. Then they passed the microphone over to Claire and asked what she did, and she said in order to explain what she brought to the team, she had to correct what I said, which was that she said I was good at coming up with lots and lots of ideas. Her job.
She made them really good.
Her job was to tell me if they were good ones or not and turn them into good ideas.
I get the
Absolutely.
feeling that, Simon, she's a little bit of a check on your ego.
Oh, trust me, I don't need. Yeah, I've got a wife and 2 children. I don't need anybody else to check my ego. I really don't.
So you've also worked with a mainstream publisher. You said that was an easier process. Was it a more pleasant process? Because
No, it wasn't, because mainstream publishers outsource their proofreading and their editing in any case.
Yes, to people like us
to people,
sometimes,
yeah,
but-
yeah. So effectively, all I was doing was working via a publishing house with another version of Claire.
Yeah,
A
but
different-
not having no contact
But
with them. Yeah.
having no relationship. So the interactions were transactional. Here's a mistake, let's change it. There was never any, could we make this better?
Even that's interesting. Even with the in-house editor, who was kind of more in charge, the project manager, were they not talking to you?
They talked to me.
Talk to you or at you?
Asked me, here are the changes we should make.
Right.
Take it or leave it. There was no collaboration. There was no understanding of my
That
voice.
definitely varies between
I
publishers.
think so, and I'm wondering
Yeah.
if it's specifically because of that publisher's business list on their model,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
disappointing.
Yeah.
to
Oh,
hear
don't
that.
get me wrong, she's very good,
Yeah.
and she's very fast, and she's very thorough, and as far as I can tell, there were no mistakes in the book,
Yeah.
not that I would spot them. But it was a very transactional relationship
Okay.
rather than a growth-orientated relationship.
Yeah.
That
But-
again just reinforces for me this importance of getting an editor or proofreader that's the right fit for you,
Yeah.
who understands you and your process, and that if you're planning on writing more than one book, you can develop a relationship.
I couldn't agree more, absolutely.
And also something that your proofreader can do for you is that, or let's call her an editor because she does a lot more than just proofreading. Because you work with her across projects, it's not just books that she's working with. I mean,
That's right.
she's having an impact on all of your content.
Yes, she proofreads my slide design and all of that kind of stuff. In fact, the conference you were talking about, my second slide deliberately had the word "received" spelled wrongly on the slide.
He says it's deliberate.
Oh yeah.
Was there a sharp intake of breath at that point?
There was damn close to a riot. And of course, what happens when you push the button then is that the letters swap themselves around
Right,
just to show that.
Yeah.
But that idea was something that grew out of a conversation with Claire,
Yeah.
because she went, you can't even spell received correctly,
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
can't spell that correctly,
Yeah.
and then went, hang on a minute, there's something I can use as an indication of the different types of mindset that different types of people have got.
And it's also a good example of, the fact that editors don't just work on one thing, and that they can work across your entire brand
Yeah.
to bring a consistency
Yeah.
across all the sort of platforms that you're
Yeah.
working on.
Yeah.
Really, it's not just about the books.
Yeah, and if we have time, she'll even proofread my tender documents.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
tends not to happen because of the deadlines, but it has happened sometimes.
Yeah.
And you would
she'll-
absolutely trust her with them if
hell
that
yeah.
was.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's no question. I wouldn't even think about arguing with her.
Yeah.
There's a great line she came up with once, which was, "You can't make this a stupid idea, boss. You can't make me do it. Why not, Claire?" Well, it's not so much that it's a stupid idea. It's more a question of I'm the only person who knows where your body will be buried in a week's time if you make me.
I'm scared of her.
Oh,
I'm scared of her.
She's a real person. I
she
promise.
sounds awesome.
But she thinks in the way that proofreaders think, which is almost the antithesis of how I think. Because we talk very much about separating the creative and the editorial process. and having them separated into two separate people really brings that home. And to be honest, we have to work quite hard sometimes at maintaining our trust, love, respect, and so on. Because the reason that she's so good at what she does, can I swear on this podcast?
It depends how much you're swearing.
I've got to use one word, just one word.
Well, we can always edit it out.
Okay, fine.
It's
Okay.
bad.
So the thing that means that I need her is almost by definition the thing that pisses me off about her. And the thing that means that I have something to create for her to correct is what pisses her off about me. It's much easier to work with that if you've got drunk with somebody and gone out for meals and gone dancing and stuff like that than it is with somebody who is a very transactional on the far end of the... So my very first book, I literally never met my editor. They were in Canada. And I had no relationship with, it's called The Little Big Voice Book, and I had no relationship with them at all.
And for some authors, maybe that relationship is important, actually.
Yes, it's definitely a choice. Some people, a
transactional relationship is enough for them, but you're obviously somebody that really feeds off and develops from that kind of more interactional.
A transactional relationship is enough for me, but it's not optimal.
Yes. Totally
I'm being a little bit pedantic about that.
No.
I can get away with a transactional, it's just not as much fun. And it means that the next time I need something proofreading, I'm starting from zero again. Whereas if there's a relationship going on, I can just throw a document at Claire and go, make this work.
She gets it.
That's something really important to point out, because for any listeners who are looking for mainstream publishing contracts, it's important to realise that even if you have a long-term relationship with the publishing company, you won't necessarily be using the same editor or proofreader each time. You won't have a choice necessarily in who you're in. So there is an issue of control there.
I think it's a shame to the podcast, because all three of us have just nodded really vigorously. Yes, absolutely. So you work perhaps with the same sub-editor or the same editor or the same commissioning editor or whatever. But the actual team that is on your book
is actually sort of at the front, on the front line.
So your relationship within a publisher is with probably a commissioning editor. And that's very, it's great. It means I don't have to do anything except write. I don't have to design the cover or anything like that. But it can be quite frustrating at times as well.
I think that's really useful for people to have heard. We've interviewed quite a few people at this conference, and you're the first person who's actually had a mainstream publishing experience, so it's really good to hear that side of it.
Yeah, they were great. Don't get me wrong, they were fabulous. They were very supportive, and the reason it became a bestseller is nothing to do with me. It's entirely down to Hoggenstadt, because they knew exactly what kind of book they wanted, because they knew exactly what was going to sell then.
And we should say this book's called Presentation Genius. And I've read it, and it's excellent. In fact, I've picked up some tips myself for when I'm doing speaking gigs, and I'm a nervous speaker, and I've got a lot of work to do, but I've learnt a lot from that. So
we'll link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, we will.
I have to say, there is nothing cooler than walking into W.H. Smith and seeing your book not just on the shelves, but on the top 10 lists. It is as cool as it sounds. It is really cool.
And there is that, and then some authors are attracted as well, not just by the jobs that will be taken away from them, but also by the prestige factor.
Absolutely.
Nothing wrong with that.
That wasn't why I went into it, but it was a heck of a buzz when it happened. And there is actually a photograph of my book at number 3 in the top sellers list, but that's because there was nobody in Smith's at the time, and I just I just moved it, photographed it, and then I moved it back to position 6, where it was actually
6 is good.
6 is great. 6 is great. And it's easy to get the old trick of an Amazon bestseller, which is when you go into a niche and you get 30 of your mates to buy the same book at the same time, and the Amazon algorithm extrapolates that. But getting a high street bestseller is very different, and I couldn't have done that without a mainstream publisher, because they knew exactly
how to position it.
They knew exactly which buyers wanted what format on what dates.
So really, again, it all comes down to an author's priorities about which route they take in terms of self-publishing or looking for a mainstream publisher. It's what suits them best.
That's right. And there is no wrong or right, is there? It is about having choices, and also I think Simon's a great example of someone who's chosen to take both paths.
Yeah.
My next book is going to be self-published.
Is it?
Yeah.
Do you find that that's where you think you're sort of happiest now with self-publishing?
I don't know. I don't know if it's that or whether I just couldn't get a publisher for it.
Let's come back to him once he's got it out there, and we can maybe revisit the whole experience again.
Yeah.
Is it time to ask the one question?
I think, you go for it.
So we've been asking all our interviewees today about if there's one particular piece of advice they'd like to give indie authors who are in the middle of writing or thinking about publishing their book. So what's the one big thing that you would teach them?
Caffeine.
We've not had that one yet.
We haven't. It's a really, really good answer. I think as an editor, that's the advice I would give as well.
Powering through.
Do you want a more serious answer?
Yeah, go on.
Why not?
Yeah, you want a more serious answer? Is to put something in front of you somewhere of why you're doing it.
Right.
Okay.
Because in the grind of writing, which is frankly bloody hard work and incredibly soul-destroying and lonely, because you're throwing away shed loads of your soul that you put on the page, you have to remember why you're doing it, otherwise you'll, if you go into the other room next door and you ask people how many of you have started to write a book, half of the people would put their hand up.
Yeah.
How many have finished it though?
Maybe half a dozen of us.
Yeah.
And the ones that have finished it are because we've got some kind of why behind it. It might be a deadline, it might be threats of violence, it might be ego, but you write it down and you put it somewhere where you see it occasionally. I think that's quite important, because if you see it all the time, it fades into the background.
Yeah.
So it's something that you think, sod it, and you slam the door, and then the back of the inside of the door is a post-it note that reminds you, or something like that.
Yeah.
Some kind of random reminder of what it is you're going to get to at the end of the day. I can't swear that works for everybody, but it works for me.
Thanks very much. That's really, really great.
That's great.
My
Thanks
pleasure.
for your time, Simon. That was brilliant.
Absolutely, enjoyed it.
We hope you enjoyed this author point of view. Thank you so much for listening to the Editing Podcast. You can rate, review and subscribe via your podcatcher.
And don't forget to share. Tell your writer friends, your editor friends, your business friends, basically anyone who writes.
And if you have any questions, please do get in touch with us via the Editing Podcast Facebook page. If you ask us, we promise we'll answer.
And we've put all the links mentioned in today's interview in the show notes so you can grab everything there.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.